Everything they taught you about success is a lie. Work harder, care more, never give up. That's exactly why you're stuck. The billionaires know something you don't. The moment they stopped caring about money was the moment it started flowing. The happiest marriages belong to people who could survive without them. The healthiest people are those who aren't obsessed with their health. You've been programmed to fail by caring too much. Your anxiety isn't fuel, it's poison. Your desperation isn't dedication, it's destruction. The game of life is rigged. And the only way to win is to stop playing by the rules they give you. The most powerful people in the world care the least. Does that shock you? It should. Because everything you've been taught about success has been backwards. You've been told to care more, try harder, push further, worry deeper. But I'm here to tell you today that your breakthrough is waiting on the other side of release. Your miracle is hiding behind your ability to let go. I was sitting with a billionaire in his office overlooking Manhattan, and he told me something that changed my perspective forever. He said, "Myles, the day I stopped caring about making money was the day I became truly wealthy." This man had lost 3 companies before he built his empire. But it wasn't until he stopped gripping success with white knuckles that success finally gripped him. You see, there's a principle at work in the universe that most people never discover. The harder you chase something, the faster it runs from you. The tighter you hold on to something, the quicker it slips through your fingers. But when you release your grip, when you stop the desperate pursuit, that's when everything begins to flow toward you. I met a woman who spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder. She sacrificed her health, her relationships, her peace of mind, all for that corner office. Every morning she woke up with anxiety churning in her stomach. Every night she went to bed replaying conversations, wondering if she'd said the right thing, if she'd impressed the right people. She cared so much about every detail, every perception, every possibility of failure that she was living in a prison of her own making. And then came the day she got passed over for the promotion she'd worked toward for 5 years. That night, sitting in her car in the parking garage, something broke inside her. But it wasn't her spirit that broke, it was her attachment. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror and said, "I'm done." The next morning, she walked into that office a different person. She stopped checking her email obsessively. She stopped staying late to impress her boss. She stopped rehearsing presentations until 2 a.m. Instead, she did her work with excellence, but without anxiety. She spoke her mind in meetings without calculating the political ramifications. She left at 5 p.m. to have dinner with her family. You know what happened? Within 6 months, she was offered not just the promotion she'd wanted, but a position 2 levels higher. Her boss told her, "There's something different about you. You have this confidence, this peace. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. And that makes me trust you more." This is the paradox of achievement. When you stop caring so much about the outcome, you become free to perform at your highest level. When you release your death grip on success, success finally has room to enter your life. Think about a professional athlete at the free throw line. The ones who miss are thinking about the crowd, the score, the consequences. The ones who make it are thinking about nothing but the ball and the basket. They've learned to care about the process, not the pressure. I watched a friend of mine build a technology company from scratch for 3 years. He obsessed over every metric, every competitor, every market fluctuation. He couldn't sleep. His hair turned gray. His marriage nearly fell apart. Then his biggest investor pulled out, and he thought it was over. In that moment of complete defeat, he found freedom. He realized he'd been so afraid of failing that he'd forgotten why he started the company in the first place. Went back to his original vision, not to beat the competition, not to impress investors, but to solve a problem he cared about. He stopped checking what his competitors were doing. He stopped refreshing his bank balance every hour. He stopped trying to be everything to everyone. Instead, he focused on building something meaningful, something that mattered to him, regardless of whether it made him rich. That company is now worth $800 million. But more importantly, he's happy. He's healthy. His marriage is thriving. He told me I had to stop caring about success to actually achieve it, you see. Caring too much is actually a form of fear. When you care desperately about something, you're really saying you're afraid of losing it. When you care obsessively about others' opinions, you're really saying you're afraid of rejection. When you care frantically about perfection, you're really saying you're afraid of failure. But here's what I want you to understand. Fear repels, love attracts. When you operate from fear, you push away the very things you want. When you operate from love, genuine love for what you do, not desperate need for what it might bring you, you become magnetic. The burden of overcaring is crushing a generation. People are more anxious, more depressed, more desperate than ever before. Why? Because they care too much about too many things that don't matter. They care about Instagram likes. They care about their neighbor's opinion. They care about looking successful more than being successful. I counseled a young entrepreneur who was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He showed me his phone, 17 different apps tracking his business metrics. He knew his conversion rates to the third decimal place. He could tell you his competitor's latest move before they announced it. But he couldn't tell you the last time he'd had a peaceful night's sleep. And I asked him, what would happen if your business failed tomorrow? He looked at me like I'd asked him about dying. That's when I knew he was too attached. Success had become his identity, his oxygen, his reason for existing. No wonder he was suffocating. We have to understand that overcaring is not commitment, it's captivity. True commitment comes from a place of strength. Overcaring comes from a place of weakness. True commitment says, I will give my best because I choose to. Overcaring says, I must succeed because I need to. The difference changes everything. When you operate from choice rather than necessity, from strength rather than desperation, from love rather than fear, the entire universe reorganizes itself to support you. But first, you have to let go. First, you have to stop caring so much about the outcome that you can't enjoy the process. First, you have to release your death grip on tomorrow so you can fully live today. This is not about becoming careless. This is about becoming carefree. Free from the cares that don't serve you. Free from the anxieties that don't help you. Free from the desperate need for approval, success, or perfection. Because on the other side of that freedom is everything you've been chasing. On the other side of letting go is everything you've been trying to hold on to. The burden of overcaring is heavy. But you don't have to carry it anymore. You can set it down. You can walk away. You can choose freedom. And when you do, when you finally stop caring about all the things that don't matter, that's when everything that does matter falls perfectly into place. The power of divine detachment exists in understanding one thing. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You were designed to flow, not to force. You were created to trust, not to control. Let me tell you about divine detachment. It's not apathy. It's not irresponsibility. It's the highest form of faith. I knew a businessman who built a multi-million-dollar manufacturing company. At the peak of his success, a fire destroyed his main facility. Insurance covered only part of the loss. His competitors circled like vultures trying to steal his clients. His board of directors called emergency meetings filled with panic and blame. But this man sat in his office with a strange peace on his face. His CFO rushed in. spreadsheets in hand, voice trembling. We're facing bankruptcy. We need to act now. The owner raised his hand and said, no, we need to think. We need to breathe. We need to see what this fire is trying to teach us. Everyone thought he'd lost his mind. How could he be so calm when everything was burning down? Here's what they didn't understand. Divine detachment is not denial. It's perspective. This man knew something deeper, that every setback is a setup for something greater. He'd learned this principle years before when his first business failed. Back then, he'd fought desperately to save it, exhausting himself, his resources, his relationships. But the harder he fought, the faster it crumbled. This time was different. He released his attachment to the outcome. He told his team, we will rebuild. But not the same way. This fire didn't destroy our company. It revealed what needed to change. Instead of scrambling to recreate what was lost, he asked better questions. Why did we build it that way? What if we could start fresh? What would we do differently within 18 months? His company was not just rebuilt but revolutionized. The fire had forced him to modernize operations. He'd been too attached to change. His efficiency increased by 40%. His profits doubled. His competitors, who thought they'd won, watched in amazement as he emerged stronger than before. You see, divine detachment operates on a universal principle. What you release, you receive back multiplied. What you try to hoard, you lose. It's the same principle that governs everything in nature. A tree must release its fruit for new fruit to grow. A butterfly must release the cocoon to discover its wings. You must release your desperate grip on life for life to flow through you. I counseled a teacher who was burning out after 20 years in education. She cared so deeply about each student that she was taking their failures personally. Every child who struggled felt like her failure. Every parent complaint felt like a judgment on her worth. She was drowning in emotional attachment to outcomes she couldn't control. One morning, she didn't get out of bed. The weight of caring had crushed her spirit. That's when she learned about divine detachment. Not detachment from love. She still loved her students, but detachment from the need to control their outcomes. She learned to plant seeds without demanding to see the harvest. She learned to teach with passion, but without possession. When she returned to the classroom, everything changed. She taught the same subjects, but with different energy. She poured her knowledge into her students, but she released them to receive it or reject it. She stopped taking their choices personally. She stopped measuring her worth by their test scores. She released them to receive it or reject it. She stopped taking their choices personally. Something miraculous happened. Her students began to thrive. Freed from the pressure of her emotional need for their success, they found their own motivation. Parents noticed the change. What's different about your class? They asked. My child actually wants to learn now. The secret was simple. She'd stopped caring about their success more than they did. This is the paradox of influence. The moment you stop needing people to change, they become open to transformation. The moment you release your attachment to results, results begin to flow. The moment you stop demanding life conform to your plans, life reveals its better plans for you. True responsibility is not about controlling outcomes, it's about controlling your contribution. You are responsible for your effort, not the outcome. You are responsible for planting, not for making the seed grow. You are responsible for speaking truth, not for making people receive it. I learned this lesson personally when I was building my organization. For years, I measured my worth by how many people showed up, how many books sold, how many lives changed. If attendance was low, I felt like a failure. If sales dropped, I questioned my calling. I was emotionally chained to every fluctuation, every response, every result. Then I discovered divine detachment. I realized my job was to deliver the message, not to make people receive it. My job was to write the book, not to make it a bestseller. My job was to teach principles, not to force transformation. This shift changed everything. When I stopped needing specific outcomes, I became free to deliver pure value. When I stopped caring about impressing people, I became free to impact people. When I released my attachment to success, success became attached to me. Divine detachment is about understanding your true source. When you know where your provision really comes from, you stop desperately clutching at channels. When you understand that your promotion comes from above, you stop manipulating circumstances below. When you realize that your value isn't determined by outcomes, you stop letting outcomes determine your peace. I met a surgeon who learned this principle in the operating room early in his career. He was so attached to perfect outcomes that his hands would shake during difficult procedures. His fear of failure was actually increasing his chance of failure. Then his mentor told him something profound. Your job is to operate with excellence. Life and death are not in your hands. This truth liberated him. He still prepared meticulously. He still operated with precision. But he released the outcome to a higher power. His success rate improved dramatically. Why? Because divine detachment had freed him from the fear that was sabotaging his skill. Here's what most people don't understand. Attachment is weakness disguised as care. When you're desperately attached to something, you're operating from lack, not abundance. You're saying, I need this to be okay. But divine detachment operates from abundance. It says, I am already okay, regardless of this outcome. This doesn't mean you don't have goals. This doesn't mean you don't work hard. It means you work from rest, not for rest. You achieve from peace, not for peace. You succeed from wholeness, not for wholeness. The difference is everything. A mother came to me, tormented about her adult son's choices. She'd spent years trying to control his decisions, fix his problems, manage his life. The more she pushed, the more he pulled away. The more she worried, the worse his choices became. She was literally loving him to death, suffocating him with her desperate need for him to be okay. I taught her divine detachment. Love him, I said, but release him. Support him, but don't carry him. Be available, but not anxious. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, releasing her child to his own journey. But when she finally let go, something shifted. Her son, freed from the weight of her worry, began to find his own way. Their relationship, freed from the strain of control, began to heal. This is the power of divine detachment. It creates space for miracles. When you stop forcing, life starts flowing. When you stop demanding, provision starts arriving. When you release your desperate grip on what must happen, what should happen, finally has room to unfold. Divine detachment is not giving up, it's giving over. It's not caring less, it's caring differently. It's not becoming passive, it's becoming powerful. Because true power doesn't come from controlling circumstances. True power comes from controlling yourself. True power comes from knowing who you are, apart from outcomes, apart from opinions, apart from achievements. When you master divine detachment, you become unstoppable. Not because you don't care about anything, but because you finally care about the right things. You care about your contribution, not others' responses. You care about your integrity, not others' approval. You care about your purpose, not others' opinions. This is the secret the world's most successful people know. They've learned to work with passion, but without desperation. They've learned to pursue goals, but not be pursued by them. They've learned to care deeply about their mission, but not be crushed by its outcomes. They've learned the art of divine detachment. and it has set them free to achieve what attachment never could. The art of strategic indifference changes everything, because you finally understand what deserves your energy and what deserves your indifference. This is not about becoming cold or disconnected. This is about becoming laser focused on what truly matters while letting everything else fade into background noise. I watched a surgeon friend of mine transform his entire practice through strategic indifference. For years, he obsessed over being the perfect surgeon. Every minor complication haunted him. Every surgical review consumed him. He was brilliant, but miserable. Skilled, but stressed. His pursuit of perfection was actually diminishing his performance. Then he learned strategic indifference. He stopped caring about being perfect and started caring about being effective. He stopped worrying about his reputation and started focusing on his patients. He became indifferent to the politics of the hospital, but passionate about the purpose of healing. His surgical outcomes improved dramatically. Why? Because he was no longer operating from fear of imperfection, but from a desire to serve. Strategic indifference means caring intensely about your values while being indifferent to distractions. It means being passionate about your purpose while being detached from others' opinions about that purpose. It means investing your emotional energy only in what you can control while remaining indifferent to what you cannot. A mother came to me, exhausted from trying to be the perfect parent. She monitored every aspect of her children's lives, their grades, their friends, their activities, their futures. She cared about everything equally, which meant she was drowning in concern. I taught her strategic indifference. Care deeply about their character. I said, but be indifferent to their career choices. Care about their values, but be indifferent to their grades. Care about their hearts, but be indifferent to their popularity. This shift revolutionized her parenting by becoming strategically indifferent to the things that didn't ultimately matter. She had more energy for the things that did. Her children, freed from the suffocating weight of her total concern, began to flourish. They made better choices when she stopped trying to control every choice. You see, most people scatter their caring like seeds on concrete everywhere but where it can actually grow. Strategic indifference is about concentrating your care where it counts. It's about being ruthlessly selective with your emotional investment. It's about understanding that indifference to the trivial is what creates space for dedication to the significant. I learned this building my organization. People criticized my methods, questioned my motives, challenged my message. Early on, I cared about every critic. I tried to answer every objection, please every person, satisfy every concern. It was exhausting and impossible. Then I discovered strategic indifference. I became indifferent to critics but attentive to truth. I became indifferent to popularity but committed to principle. I became indifferent to being understood by all but focused on serving those who were ready. This is the art, knowing when to care deeply and when to be completely indifferent. The master of life learns this distinction. They care about their contribution but are indifferent to applause. They care about excellence but are indifferent to comparison. They care about growth but are indifferent to the pace others expect. Strategic indifference is not about caring less, it's about caring smart. It's about investing your limited emotional resources where they generate the highest return. It's about understanding that indifference to the insignificant is what empowers your impact on the significant. When purpose replaces pressure, you shift from needing to giving, from taking to contributing, from desperate to deliberate. This transformation changes not just what you achieve, but who you become. I knew an entrepreneur who spent 10 years chasing money. Every deal was about profit margins. Every relationship was about potential gain. Every decision was filtered through financial pressure. He was successful by world standards, but empty by soul standards. His marriage was failing. His health was declining. His joy was non-existent. Then bankruptcy hit. He lost everything. The houses, the cars, the reputation. Sitting in his studio apartment, eating rice and beans, he discovered something profound. Without the pressure to maintain an image, he remembered why he'd started his first business: to solve problems, to serve people, to create value. Purpose emerged from the ashes of pressure. He started again, but differently. Instead of asking, how much can I make, he asked, how many can I serve? Instead of measuring profit, he measured impact. Instead of living from lack, he lived from overflow. The shift was revolutionary. Within 3 years, he'd built a company worth more than everything he'd lost. But more importantly, he found something money couldn't buy: fulfillment. When you operate from purpose instead of pressure, you tap into unlimited resources. Pressure says, I need this to happen. Purpose says, I need to contribute. Pressure creates scarcity. Purpose creates abundance. Pressure focuses on getting. Purpose focuses on giving. I counseled a community leader who was burning out, trying to fix every problem in his city. He felt the pressure of every homeless person, every struggling family, every social issue. The weight was crushing him. Then he discovered the shift from pressure to purpose. Instead of feeling responsible for solving everything, he focused on his unique contribution. Instead of carrying the pressure of outcomes, he carried the purpose of service. This shift liberated him. He stopped trying to be everyone's savior and started being himself. He stopped measuring success by problems solved and started measuring it by lives touched. He stopped operating from the pressure of need and started operating from the purpose of love. His impact multiplied because his energy was no longer scattered by pressure but focused by purpose. You see, pressure is about you, your needs, your fears, your image. Purpose is about others, their growth, their benefit, their transformation. When you shift from pressure to purpose, you shift from needing to giving. And here's the universal principle: givers gain. When you stop chasing and start contributing, what you need starts chasing you. This is the secret of fulfillment: living from overflow instead of lack. When purpose replaces pressure, you become a channel instead of a container. You become a river instead of a reservoir. You become a giver instead of a taker. And in that transformation, everything you've been desperately seeking flows naturally into your life. Your new beginning starts the moment you release your death grip on life and trust the flow. The transformation doesn't require years of therapy or meditation retreats. It happens in an instant. The instant you decide to stop caring about what doesn't matter and start living from what does. Here's your starting point. Identify 3 things you're desperately caring about right now. Write them down. Look at them. Now ask yourself, if I stop caring about this outcome, would I be free to perform better? The answer is always yes. Release them. Not the action, but the attachment. Not the effort, but the anxiety. Tomorrow morning, approach your work differently. Do it with excellence, but without desperation. Speak your truth, but release how it's received. Give your best, but detach from the results. Watch what happens when you operate from peace instead of pressure. Notice how differently people respond when you're not needy for their approval. Start with small acts of strategic indifference. When someone criticizes you, pause before responding. Ask yourself, does this deserve my emotional energy? Most times, it doesn't. Save your caring for what counts: your values, your purpose, your contribution. Let everything else roll off like water off a duck's back. Practice divine detachment daily. Before every meeting, every conversation, every task. Remind yourself, I am responsible for my contribution, not the outcome. Do your part with excellence. Then release the results to unfold as they will. You'll find that outcomes improve when you stop strangling them with neediness. Create boundaries that liberate. Say no to what drains you so you can say yes to what fills you. Care deeply about a few meaningful things rather than shallowly about everything. Remember, the most powerful word in your vocabulary is no. It's what creates space for your meaningful yes. The promise I make to you today is this. When you master the art of not caring about what doesn't matter, everything that does matter will fall into place. Peace and productivity will dance together in your life. Success will chase you instead of you chasing it. Relationships will deepen because you're no longer suffocating them with need. This is not a theory, it's a law. The law of release and receive. The law of detachment and attraction. The law of letting go and letting in. Everything you've been frantically chasing is waiting for you to stop chasing. Everything you've been desperately gripping is waiting for you to open your hands. Your revolution begins now. Not next week. Not when circumstances change. Not when you feel ready. Now, in this moment, with this breath. Release the pressure. Embrace the purpose. Let go of the outcome. Focus on the output. Stop caring about what everyone thinks. Start living from what you know. The world is waiting for the version of you that emerges when you stop caring about impressing it. Your destiny is calling for the person you become when you stop desperately needing things to work out your way. Your miracle is prepared, but it's waiting for you to create space for it by releasing your death grip on your current reality. This is your moment. This is your choice. This is your new beginning. The moment you stop caring about what doesn't matter. Everything that matters will recognize you as its rightful owner and rush to take its place in your life. The universe responds to authenticity, not anxiety. It answers to purpose, not pressure. It yields to flow, not force. So let go, release, trust, and watch everything fall perfectly into place.